Hey guys, so I was checking out one of these compilations with Jordan Peterson, and I just want you guys to watch this small section. And I had a few brief thoughts that came to mind when I watched this. Let's do it. What's the format we're going to use here, guys? Yeah, I guess I'll use this one. All right, sorry, I was just choosing what the screen share. Man, had a blocked nose. It's going on like 10 days straight. Damn it. Whole family has this cold. All right, let's do this.
I want to know, what is your answer to young people for some of the really big problems facing humanity, like the climate catastrophe, like economic crisis, like the precarious job market? Because they just don't, like, you talk all this much about individual responsibility. Most of us are never going to be able to afford.
Okay, so she's about to say that most of us are never going to be able to afford what? To improve ourselves as individuals, to develop patience, acquire humility, compassion, empathy. So what the problem with this generation now is, and the schools are spurring this, is that it's really a bunch of teachers that are teaching students to become basically activists. Seriously, it's basically activists. So they're going to go, let's say, for example, become vegan. They're going to go to a grocery store. They're going to decide to become activists and change the world by taking products like milk from the grocery store and just dumping it, narcissistically, videotaping it so that they can put it on their Instagram and TikTok and try and get some virtue signal points. So when I started watching this particular lady speaking to JP, she was downplaying the idea of knowing ourselves, of having the emotional skills to digest all of the difficulties that life is. It's going to happen. It's going to happen to everybody. Some people have it a little worse than others, but the whole point is that everybody, to a certain extent, will go through one crisis after another, one struggle, one situation, and most people are not really encouraged, or because they're not encouraged in this current society, they don't have the skills, the social skills. You can pass by if you need. They really don't have the skills, the virtues, the inner qualities, the ability to articulate. Um, we have the phones, and this is not just this younger generation. It has really had a profound impact on our brains. There's already studies that come out showing how pornography, social media, internet, Facebook, all of these things, because of the brain's neuroplasticity, its ability to really adapt. And when we do repetitious things, our brain will form pathways, and the more that we go and create that pathway, the more prone we will, that's how habits are formed, right? And you have to break that cycle. So these passageways, these roads, in our neuroplasticity, it's really having an effect, I think. All of this social media, like there's studies saying, about the dopamine release of, posting something and seeing thumbs up, seeing the views go up. I have to admit, like, I mean, I'm a content creator, so yeah, there is a dopamine release if you, wow, man, I already got 46, and stuff like that. And I've succumbed to those kind of dopamine media. I had a big gaming problem, and it was like there was nothing to win. It was a stupid like imaginary castle. And I'm very addictive in a way. I'm very excessive, and I've learned how to apply that. And in my career, I've excelled actually because of that quality. But until I got it under control, I was prone to all sorts of addictions and compulsiveness. And when I finally, stopped drinking and stuff like that, fine. But in a way, I transitioned shortly after quitting drinking to this stupid imaginary castle game. I wasted money on it. There was, it's not even gambling, okay, and it took a lot of time from my family. So even though I got out of the drinking, there was still a large level of self-absorption, and that caused me a lot of pain, and it caused obviously my loved ones a lot of pain. So when a person doesn't know themselves, or is not encouraged to go down a religious or at least a spiritual path of understanding the emotional and spiritual aspects of man, our yearnings, our desires, being taught that all of these worldly pleasures are fleeting, and that if we give in too much to our passions, we actually become enslaved by the habits that we initially called freedom. Think about it. Let's continue with this video.
To have all of these assets to have responsibility over. So what is your advice beyond banal comments like...
Okay, cleaning your room is not a banal comment. Okay, first of all, there's even psychological studies that show that if you're in an organized house, it will actually affect your brain function and your mood. If you are in a disordered, cluttered, and dirty house, it doesn't matter if you realize it or not, it's having a effect on you, and it can increase depression, anxiety, aggression. It's just a chaotic physical environment is like a representation of the chaos within you. And as you start getting your mind more in order, you will automatically be disturbed by the clutter. And when you're feeling emotionally good, you're not depressed, you have your priorities straight, you're really making an effort to live by a certain standard that you've set, and you're failing, but you're really trying, and you're seeing slow advancements. This will have a profound effect on your inner life, and you will automatically start having a manifestation in your physical life, where starting with cleaning your room and stuff like that. So when Jordan Peterson says something as profound as clean your room, it is true. So this lady thinks that our youth, her, me, everyone here, you guys listening, that the priority is to scream like Chicken Little, looking at the sky, going, climate change, your fault for climate change, it's your fault for climate change. What's that going to solve? Yes, of course, it's important to have social action. But for especially, I'm concentrating more on our youth, to make that your prime focus on institutional racism and climate change and inequality and toxic masculinity. It's like you're constantly looking outwards instead of inwards. And these people are building their house on sand, where every evening the tide comes in and completely levels them, and they're in chaos. And then they go online here and they start crying, and just like, I'm all for being honest with my viewers, trying to talk about my vulnerabilities. Maybe somebody else who's living that, it could be helpful. I don't mind like sharing so some things that are a little more personal online, but just going on there and crying, and not having the fortitude, not being encouraged, not even knowing that it's really an option, thinking that this current society it is so sick, and they think it's normal. we'll go as far as to say that current culture thinks that it is literally progressing when it's way past Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, if you want to talk symbolically here.
Well, it's actually rather difficult to answer a question that ends with "your comments are banal" politely. So, I would consider our opinion a personal political statement than actually a question. So why don't you try reformulating that so that there's an actual question there?
What is your So what is your advice to young people when you talk about you need to be individually responsible, but when there are things that are so far out of our control?
No, there's that serenity prayer. I don't know it by heart, but I think I'll give it a try. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Something along that lines, to focus on the things that are a priority in your life, the things that you can affect positive change with, and understanding that there are a lot of issues that socially we need to deal with. But if each individual in that society has not do not have proper character developed, then that majority, that whole group of society will have an askewed view, and they'll come up with, like we're seeing, these ridiculous changes in society and claims and ideologies, just springing out. And it just shows that people no longer look at themselves individually. They look at themselves as a group. I'm part of this group. I'm part of that group. And that is dangerous because it creates basically tribalism. It dehumanizes those that are outside of your tribe, and so this lady again is really downplaying the individual work that each one of us has to do. And when we really start wanting to improve ourselves, wanting to sharpen the blade, we really start realizing, and it builds humility to be honest with your character defects. And then you can see the character defects in others, but you can also see it in yourself, and that helps you at least have a little bit more compassion, or it prevents true resentment and hatred. If you understand the sin that is basically manifesting in that person, but in a very specific way. Maybe it's not a way that you manifest, but if you understand, because you've looked deep inside and been honest, and you understand the root cause of sin and what it does in your life, you see it manifesting in this person, and maybe they are ravaged more severely than another person in this spiritual sickness we call sin. But the minute that you do start looking at and inside, and you make that a priority in your life, it is a worthwhile cause. People will go to high school, then they'll go to college, then they'll go to university, they'll get a master's, a PhD. Some of these people are still in school in their mid 30s, okay, getting their PhD. They will spend decades for a career that they'll do for a few more decades and retire. Okay. But people are not willing to spend 15 minutes, an hour a day, hey, an hour a week in self-improvement. And this is the problem, hate it or not, religion, okay, Montreal used to be called the city of cathedrals. Mark Twain came here and visited Montreal, and he said you couldn't throw a brick without busting a church window, kind of thing. That's how religious people were. And we see that with all of its corruption and its flaws. I understand that religion, is practiced by humans, and humans will tend to screw up everything. But there was a lot more focus on personal responsibility, and maybe it was a little too stern. And there's definitely some dogma and a lot of fear and guilt and stuff that kind of crept into the institution, especially the Catholic Church. But it's still, people did have these Christian values of recognizing that we are all sinful, acknowledging that, repenting of that. The more that people have left God, they don't realize that humans are religious animals. Okay, if you don't have a said religion, Christian, Muslim, Judaism, something like that, you will become religious with something else. Even atheism, atheists are that is a religion, that is a worldview, and it is a belief structure. And believe me, they hold it as fervently as other religious people. Other people can, just latch on to veganism, and it becomes literally a worldview and a religion. This can happen with all sorts of things. Bob Dylan, cleverly said, it might be the devil or it might be the Lord, but you're going to have to serve somebody. And we will always create idols in our life, and it's your choice or not. Are you going to create the things of this world? Are you going to look for true peace, serenity, fulfillment in worldly things that everyone said it with any experience? Any older person will say the pleasures of this world are fleeting and they mean nothing, in the end. And they understand what's, important. So go after things, that are spiritual wealth. Know yourself, admit your faults, develop a kind heart, develop wisdom, and that's it. Let's just listen to the rest, and then I gotta go.
Like climate catastrophe, like the precarious job, like the economic crisis. What is your answer
Do you think that you're worse off than your grandparents?
I think there are different challenges.
Do you think you're worse off than your grandparents?
Jordan, once again, we're not going to cross-examine that.
We'll stop there. This was just an example that I've seen a lot, and it's come to mind, and I just happened to be watching it on TV, and that kind of that thought sprung to my mind that this is the attitude of today's youth. They're a bunch of activists. They're virtue signaling, and I think that it's a lot our fault, our generation's fault. We've allowed them to go on social media. This is a new thing, social media. All of these apps and stuff. This has never before ever been experienced by society. So a lot of us didn't realize how addictive or how it could really change. We were adults. Some of us, could realize and come to a conclusion that, like, oh boy, I'm spending a lot of time on this. You know what? No, I'm going to discipline myself. But the children, okay, that are being given these stupid iPads at school instead of textbooks and pen and paper, like to be able to actually know how to cursive write. Do you realize that language at the moment is literally, reversing itself into hieroglyphics? I mean, remember hieroglyphics? We used to draw like pictures, and kids can no longer articulate or use. I'm not going to say who, but one of my kids literally said, "You sound like a robot." And he later told me it was because I was using big boy words. Okay, that I'm talking and I'm trying to discipline, and I'm using words that are just common, articulate words to express thoughts, and they don't know what it means because they don't use, that's what I like about Jordan Peterson. I don't idolize the guy. Okay. I followed Jesus. Okay. I put God and the Son of God on a pedestal, but I do appreciate people. There are some people that I listen to and I'm like, wow, I really enjoy and Jordan Peterson is one. He's not perfect. Some views, a little off, but, anyways, that's the end of it. I got to go pick up my son. See you guys.